You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this one features Ryan Paterson, who is the CEO of Unplugged Technologies, a company dedicated to advancing commercial cellular privacy. With over 20 years of experience, he's led innovative technology development and operational initiatives across federal and civilian sectors. Previously, he funded IST Research, where he developed advanced information systems for challenging environments, culminating in a successful exit in 2020. A two-time DARPA veteran, Paterson played key roles in transitioning groundbreaking technologies to the Department of Defense, including deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. In this episode, we discussed his work at deploying at DARPA, integrating emerging tech into these challenging real-world operations. We also discussed his current work at Unplugged, making a privacy play in the cellular market, and how AI is part of their future plans to enhance user privacy on hardware devices, along with new partnership between Unplugged and Brave that went live last week. And now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. Ryan, welcome to The Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Luke. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this one. Our listeners might not be totally familiar with Unplugged. Could you mind giving them a little bit of background about what Unplugged is and what the main mission is and what you guys are kind of doing to fulfill it?
Sure. Yeah, we 2.5 years ago embarked on this idea of we are getting so owned by data leakage from our own phones. Some of that accidental, some of that very purposeful. And we realized that, most consumers of telecommunications have no idea just how much of their personal data gets sent out and sold over and over and over again. And we set out to create a solution that allows for the everyday average cell phone user to get a little more confidence in the privacy that they get from using their phones. And this comes from stripping ad IDs out, putting the privacy functions right at their fingertips at the OS level. And we wanted to make it, accessible to everybody. We've got lots of folks. I've got many friends that are from the privacy sector, and they know how to take a thing and root a thing and do some other weird things to pull some of their privacy back, but the average user just simply doesn't have that. And so that was our mission. How do we return privacy to the average phone user?
And so the Unplugged phone, just to it doesn't have Google Play services or any of that.
Correct.
Kind of duopoly tech on it.
Yeah. So again, if you're gonna take a holistic approach at privacy or security or anything, you've got to work across the full stack of things. And so there is a hardware component of ours, the Unplugged phone. There's our own operating system, Libertas. There is an app store and an app suite that has a VPN, antivirus, firewall wrapped into it. So we some fundamental components of it. We've stripped out Google mobile services completely from the phone. We have brought those privacy focuses right to a single button click on the phone, and then you can get access to everything. You can turn off, data from your USB-C, microphone, camera, two-factor authentication, near field communication. You can turn all of that off so that nobody can get into your phone. And again, that goes, from a hardware button push to the firmware. We've included a kill switch, a physical separation of the battery from the compute. You and I are both old enough to remember when you can pull the battery out of your BlackBerry, and right. I'm pretty sure it was dead. That's not the case right anymore, right? You turn a phone off now; it's not really off; it's sort of software off. But they're pinging it, so we put that back in, physical separation, and again, then a suite of tools that after the first year come with subscription. When you buy the phone, you get them free the first year. We tried to really put together a full package that a user can be confident in from the time they open the box.
That's really cool. And I think it's a really great approach to it too, because people really don't understand kind of the degree in which the Google kind of apparatus, tracks you across everything. I mean, we see this with having a browser where we can control at the water's edge where it's the four walls of the browser, right? Like, but we can't control what Google's doing with your device, and everything's kind of coming through their ecosystem. So, you're getting attributed all over the place. So it's really cool to see a challenger coming to market that's like privacy focused, and also just trying to kind of like de-Google you from your device, like, because you bring this everywhere with you, and then the kill switch is really cool too. Idea like being able to have that separation. Why do you think, like, I mean, I have a ton of questions on this, but of all the times to do this, why is right now kind of the time you guys are making this play with the market being how it is?
Yeah, it was interesting. So, a little bit of my personal background. I built a company from 2008 and sold it in 2020. Took a couple years off. Eric Prince is one of our business partners in this endeavor. He and I've known each other for a number of years. He was one of the guys when I started getting bored, not working, saying, like, got any interesting projects? And he's like, yes, cell phone guy, I do. Please come help me with this project. But I had a ton of friends who just said, 10 years ago, nobody's going to pay for privacy. Like, nobody's going to spend you think about the EFF, my friends from San Francisco, lots of folks that were very concerned when the Patriot Act initially went into place. After 9/11, they were like, hey, this is a very slippery slope. That at the time I was in the Marine Corps, I was like, yes, I'm all for the Patriot Act. But as the technology that's in all of our pockets increased in capacity and capability, as advertisers and technologists began to work together, it was very clear that it was data and precision that the intelligence community would have and did pay billions of dollars for. And now it's in everybody's pocket all over the world. And so I think there's a couple of things that have happened in the last 3 years. We started to see overstep, where government entities were buying commercially available data. That commercially available data was being used to get a probable cause affidavit. And then that was then initiating warrants and subpoenas and all of those things. And that's not ever what the technology was initially designed for. The technology was really just designed to get the best advertisement to the right person at the right time, so that they don't have to sift through a lot of garbage, right? Like, we absolutely understand the economic model that the companies put together, but there's now no turning it off. And it is available. There were 2 articles just out over the last couple of days. Wired just put an article out the other day talking about how precise they were. A group of researchers bought some data from one of the data brokers, and they were able to map, sort of all military installations in Germany. I mean, that was the thing that they took. Pattern of life, where they went to lunch, what time they came through the gate every morning. And we've heard it. Everybody's like, oh, it's anonymous. It's just an anonymous hash. But all I've got to know is 1 or 2 other pieces of data about you, and I'm into your whole pattern of life. So I think there were some of those things. We continued to see large breaches of data from big companies that were not protecting it. And so I think the world of communications users are starting to realize that if they don't take a proactive approach to their privacy, but it's surely not the companies and the government are not going to do that for them. Yeah.
No, it's a really, really great point you bring up too, especially about kind of the time, the scale of time with this, right? Where you had like kind of that Patriot Act, and then even like when and this is one of the things that brought me to Brave initially was just that you had Snowden doing the revelations where you're like, okay, the government's plugging into all these things. But then right after that, if you look at the timeline, you've got programmatic advertising and then this whole vertical of business intelligence where then everybody started to have a data warehouse. Like all these major companies started to build data warehouses. And to your point, right, like now the government doesn't even have to do anything, nefarious. They just go buy the data, right? Like, which is, people don't understand that at all. And that's one of the things where I drilling into that whole non-Google point, right? Where if you don't give Google your data through through their Play Store, then there's nothing for them to buy, right? Like, which is one of those ways. The amount of data you're not giving away is huge just from that one move alone, which is really cool.
I think not all of it's Google either, right? I mean, so Google creates the framework, they have the APKs and all that, but every app that's out there installs these trackers. Like the fact that, like, if you're looking at any browser and any web page, and you don't have your browser open, so they're blocking all those trackers. Like there's advertisements that are 17 pages down of scrolling, that are tracking everything about you. All of it, your IP address, everything about you, and you never even that never passes you by. And I don't think people understand just how much that is. And it's not just Google, right? There's just the entire ecostructure of how that commerce, community works.
The surveillance economy, right?
Everything.
Yeah,
the surveillance economy.
And then the apps are installed on your device, and you're giving them all of this framework level access, right, where they can start to get much more precise data from you. Where and who knows where it's getting what? They can't give you a cookie prompt on an app, right? Like they're just doing their thing. I think that's a great point, and it's something where I'm really glad that you guys are doing what you're doing, because it is, and it's something we started to notice too. Like, okay, a lot of this used to be kind of constrained to a browser, but now you look at a Windows computer. You're authenticating into the operating system, and then it carries through to your browser if you're using the same login, and it's just like, these things are so like embedded now. It's like Russian dolls, right? Like layers and layers and layers deep, and having a device that can help you kind of cut the head off right at the right spot. It's like super critical. So that's cool. And really quick too. I mean, like, you've got a background, like you were in, I think you were in DARPA, right? Like two served in Afghanistan. And how did your experience, like, maybe give folks a little bit of background on that? Cause I think it's a super interesting area. So much cool stuff came out of DARPA, like, but also like, how does like working with DARPA, in some of your experience overseas, like help you when you're launching something like Unplugged?
Yeah. So, I did 12 years in the Marine Corps. One of the tours, I went to Monterey, got my master's in applied mathematics, ended up back in Quantico, Virginia, the crossroads of the Marine Corps, at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. And that entity had the outreach to other organizations in the science and technology world, DoD. DARPA was one of them. I ended up there as an intern, talked my way into as a uniformed program manager. And then I left the Marine Corps at the 12-year mark, started a company, started, growing something. Afghanistan had been going on for a bit. An administration change happened, and some friends that I knew said, hey, the new director of DARPA is keenly interested in figuring out how to do real-time operational trials of emerging technologies in Afghanistan. And because of the work that I had done the first time, taking technology into Iraq, doing some transitions directly to military programs of record, people asked me to come back, and I did. And I set up a forward organization. It's the first time DARPA had actually gone forward since Vietnam. We brought in a dozen or so programs over the 3 to 4 years that capacity was up. Learned a ton. I think we absolutely changed some concepts that the military had, and I can't get into a ton of specifics on that. One little project that we looked at was a crowdsourcing project, and how can you get very precise response from a large part of the community. That then came and spun into my second company, and we built on that and sold those things. And so, my experience at DARPA, the thing that I loved about that agency was, people didn't get to come and stay at DARPA for a career with a specific research agenda. You get to come to DARPA for 4 years max. Every once in a while, there's somebody that stays for 6, but you're there for 4 years. You come in, you start a program, you try to get it almost to transition. You actually, because of the timing, you can't ever see, most people don't see the end of their program. Somebody else finishes their program for them. And then the agencies send you back, right? They come from industry, they come from academia, what have you. But, what they don't want is, people to set up an agenda that they keep fighting for research to do a thing. Like, you come in, you prove that you can do it, and then you move on. And then the technology has legs or it doesn't have legs. And so, I think that for me, both my previous company and this one, like there's no guarantee this company Unplugged is going to be around in 3 to 5 years. So like the only thing we can do right now is push as hard as we can and as fast as we can, and take lots of external input from folks like you all at Brave and others that have been giving us feedback.
That's cool. So it's like almost like term limits, right, or something similar to that. Like
100%.
Yeah. And I think and I'm not sure how familiar folks are around DARPA. Like, so you mentioned too, it's like kind of a mix of like, academia and industry and governmental, like agency kind of cooperative thing. But a lot of interesting stuff's come out of there too, like that everybody's using in their daily lives, right? Like from DARPA.
Yeah. Some people, people will say like the very first TCP IP packet, flowed across between two universities on DARPA-funded research, right? Most of this early stealth technology, DARPA was founded in 1958 as a response to Sputnik, right? And the mission's been the same since 1958. Prevent us from being technically surprised by our adversaries and create the same technical surprise for our adversaries. That's it. That's the mission. It's always been there. Their model is, I love the model, that it just doesn't let people, camp and do things. But yeah, we do. We bring scientists and researchers and operational folks from all over. They mix in weird ways. Projects come and go. Some are successful, some aren't. And I think that's another thing that I like about DARPA is there is not a fear of failure. Right. There's something to be learned by failing and, keeping a project going for 10 years just because we don't want to say it failed, is not part of their ethos. If it's not working, the project's just going to be gone. And
That's awesome. No, it's super interesting. And just kind of like change gears kind of slightly. I mean, what are some of we know how it is at Brave, just kind of dealing with blocking certain things and how their dependencies and basically like this octopus of big text kind of like everywhere. Like, what are some of the challenges you guys run into trying to do that at the device level where, you've got everybody's accustomed to like Google things or big tech things, right? Like, what are some of the challenges you guys face with shipping a device that's like a phone where, you have that kind of convenience need and paired with the privacy front?
Yep. And there are many, one roadblock is, we're not building, we're small, we're self-funded. We've taken about $7 million, of seed capital, about $9.5 million in revenue this year. But wow. When you go to a chip buyer, and you're buying 10,000 units, like we don't move anybody's needle, right? And we're like, no, we really need 10,000 more. And they're like, so we've got to piggyback. We've got to piggyback on somebody that's putting in a 500,000 chip order. And we're like, can you just add 10,000 more? And they're happy to do that. But they're not going to spin a thing for us. Right. So that, that's one of the things that the convenience thing is tough. I wrote an article about a month ago, and I remember my shift when I left DARPA. And so I'd been a BlackBerry user and a Windows operating system inside of the government. And then I got out of the industry. I'm like, gosh, everybody I'd seen in industry was all on Apple products. And I tried to make that change over. And like 2 weeks after I got my first iPhone, I gave it back. So I was like, that does not work for me in business. Then they quickly caught up. But I had to carry this paper thing in my briefcase of like, what is it on my Mac, right? To remind me of what those things are. And there are a ton of things that are there. When you take GMS out of the phone, there are a lot of applications that require it. Like Google Maps doesn't work without Google mobile services.
Right.
You can still get on the website, you can still find things, but that sort of real-time tracking of where I am all the time. We all love that ability. Like, we came to meet you in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and it was just like, here's the name of a coffee shop. There was no address given, no directions given. It was like this name of this place at this time. And and you count on phones to do those things. But I will tell you, I navigate with Waze a lot. Waze works no problem on the phone. We've been experimenting with Micro G and some of those other things that allow you to have some Google experience without having yourself logged in and it collected everything about, or, around your persona. And so, I think some of it is folks will have to learn that, a significant level of privacy comes with a little bit of friction. But I'll tell you what's happened to me is, all of these apps that used to be a thing that I used, I just don't use them anymore, right? I use my phone to talk to people, to navigate, to get information at my fingertips. And I'm not having any big, any huge issues. There's a few things about integration with Android Auto. So, getting to present on your phone, we're working hard to track those things down. But yeah, I mean, there are some frustrations that our users use. We've got an early adopters channel, and I'm in the early adopters channel every morning. And so I don't know, there's probably 400 people in there, and I try to get in and answer questions, and I pick those out and throw them back to the engineering team. So yeah, I won't say it's without friction for sure. But it's also been my only phone for the last 4 months, and I'm completely fine.
That's awesome. No, I mean, yeah. I think that's I was going to touch on that too. I think, that the early adopters, right? Like, it's such a key thing. I know with Brave, we dealt with this a lot, especially in early days when stuff was a lot rougher and we broke a lot of things. And so, those early adopters were like key. And so you guys have a community of early adopters that are giving feedback, and you guys are integrated with them?
We are. Yeah. So yeah, my entire QA team is in that channel. The CTO is in the channel. I'm in the channel all the time. It's great feedback for us. They're like, hey, this update just went out and this thing no longer works. We're able to really quickly iterate on those things. And then, just some really fun community things happen in there. So I was going to ask about that. When you mentioned channel, where is this taking place? Do you guys have your own kind of chat app or something like that? We do. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So I talked early about the fact that it's, hardware, firmware, software, right? So our application suite has the Unplugged Messenger, the Unplugged VPN, the Unplugged antivirus, and the firewall. And so all of those things come together in this package. And so, yeah, Unplugged Messenger is the place where that happens. It's based on the Matrix and Element open source projects.
Okay.
And yeah, so,
So you've got channels, right? Or groups, just for listeners that aren't totally familiar. So it's almost like Correct. A Slack or something where you've got...
You can think Slack, you can think Signal, what have you, right? So you spin up a group, exactly. You make it open, you make it public, you close it for, inside. We've it was a thing I made the company do about 8 months ago. I said, we are going to operate the business inside of this messenger. We're not don't That's tell awesome. Me Microsoft Teams. Don't tell me this. I want us to feel any pinch points, that our customers would deal with. And
dog fooding is everything, right?
If you're not dog fooding, you're everything. You exactly.
That's awesome. And I know, I guess it would probably safe to mention this here too, right? You guys are planning to ship Brave browser and search.
We are. Yeah. We released our firmware version 2 3 days ago. And awesome. Brave is now shipping as the default browser and the default device search. And so there's 10,000 phones that we had already manufactured. The next 10,000 phones are getting manufactured in the next week and a half. And they will ship burned in with Brave as our partner on browsing, right? We share awesome. So much. We share so much in terms of ethos that we can still serve a customer what feels like a customized offering without having to collect all of their data and monetize it across a bunch of different channels.
It's so cool too. I mean, I think we've never really had a situation before where you've got the hardware that ships with Brave, and then also having the search engine there too. I mean, that's such a cool thing for us to see. And I think we'll have to spend some time in that early adopters group too, because I'd love to make sure that we're engaged with the community on your guys' side too, and that we can capture up issues and make sure that folks are there. So maybe I'll go spend some time in that channel too.
All right.
To make sure everybody's happy there. But we're thrilled about it, man. I think it can be an example too for the broader space of how, I mean, when just coming into this space back in like 2016, all of this was kind of in the abstract. You didn't really have privacy tools that were usable, and the fact that now there's both an Android device, and so many people are familiar with Android. I mean, like I've tested out the phone; it feels like an Android phone. It's great. Like there's nothing, you got to make some adjustments, but it is not terribly difficult to use at all. And the fact that we're Braves on there too, I mean, like it's kind of a cool combination. I think that'll help to like really kind of improve people's privacy footprint. So we're super stoked that you guys are down to ship us there, and hopefully and we'll be on Brave side too. I think we're going to be running some promos for you guys too, and so more and more Brave users can find about Unplugged and kind of take that journey if they choose, and give us lots of feedback and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and some of the conversations we had when we met in San Francisco that I'm excited about for 25 and onward, right? So like, how do we get let's be very clear, the personalized ad delivery is really convenient. Like I don't rarely, right? So how is there possibility for that to happen on device in a large language model between our system, your browser, things that have happened, right? So somebody gets that feeling of very personalized delivery of experience without any of that data having to come off device or out of browser and back anywhere else and monetize. And so I think that's one of the most exciting things that I'm looking forward to in 2025 is how do we embed some of that stuff on device and not let it come off, protect it with everything we have, but still give folks that very personalized feel with those models built into the phone.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of territory around this to get kind of like early legs on too. Like we ship with an AI, assistant in the browser and all of those things that are be now on the device, which is super cool. And I think too, like one of the things we've been talking to your guys' teams about, and this is just neat for us because our research team spent years, right, like developing privacy preserving methodologies for everything from like accounting and a bunch of other things and reporting and targeting, all these things. And we haven't really run into a ton of cases where folks are coming to us and saying, look, like you guys did something with Brave. Like, how can we do that with what we're doing? And that was one of the really cool things about working with you guys is that you guys were one of those first folks that came to us and said, look, like we have privacy needs. You guys have been doing R&D. And so I'm excited to kind of get our teams together on that because, the stuff we put out, we actually just released another paper yesterday about this reporting protocol that we have about Boomerang that our research team's been working on. And I shared that with some of your guys and stuff. But I think this is really an exciting time for that reason, right? And for ways that we can kind of bridge these two things together, especially as you guys grow too, because that's no small feat. It's one thing to make a piece of software, but to put the hardware out too, it's like a Herculean effort, right? And it takes some courage to kind of get into the market like that. And,
plenty of friends that said, you're crazy. You're crazy. Hardware is hard. What are you doing? Oh, yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. That's sort of been the story of my career. I never know what I'm doing, but you can figure it out as you go.
And I think what's also nice is that I'd be curious your take on this too. The privacy side of things is kind of a mixed bag, right? You've got this is what I personally found. A lot of things we try to do is make it so that you can have really, really strong privacy, but not break the entire web, or break as little bit of it as possible. But then there's kind of this element of the privacy community that are so hardcore that if you're not using something that breaks 60% of the internet, then you're not in our club or whatever. And are you guys how, it's tough to navigate, right? But that's one of the things I like about what you guys are doing where, I tried the phone. You can use so many things on it that you could use otherwise. It's just a different way of going about it, basically.
It is. Yeah. So, to be very frank sort of about that part of the community, we've gotten some pushback that we haven't open sourced anything. Right. And it's not that we don't, that we've got something to hide. It's just, we're a very small team. And like, there's nothing worse than putting something out open source that's not well documented, not well talked about. Right. And this is a thing. By the time this airs, we will have publish the kernel to the OS. We'll publish the entire antivirus.
Oh, cool.
We're going to hire somebody to, specifically full time to publish back into the Matrix Elements project, right? Because it's core to what we are in our messenger, and we think there's some, there's great stuff there. We think there's other things that could be there, and so we want to invest back in that. So we'll be coming out with. We will have already, by the time this airs, had an announcement on those things, and so I think.
Oh, that's fantastic,
Luke. That's one of the things that's prevented us from being taken seriously by the community. Like my friends at the EFF, I've got some friends,
that's great,
lots of folks that have talked, and they're like, why aren't you open source? So that's coming. That's coming.
It is. No, that's great to hear, man. Because and that's one of the things too. I think that folks like we're all open source here too. So I think it's also one of those strengths about like working together on this is that starting a company is incredibly hard, and especially with as many inputs and outputs that go into having a device and software company together. We haven't even done hardware. It's not been something we've ventured into just for that reason. But, so I can totally understand how the resource part of that is difficult because there's all this management and overhead that you have to deal with maintaining the open source side of that. So it's really cool to hear that that's coming out. But also, hopefully, the open source things we do hopefully help benefit too, since we're shipped on the device and can help kind of alleviate some of that. But I'm really excited to start seeing stuff from Unplugged users come into our GitHubs and into the community and stuff like that too. So it's super cool to hear that you guys are planning on that because I'm sure the public wants to know about that.
They do.
That's great, man. Yeah. And so how are you guys getting the word out about what you're doing? I imagine that's a whole other wing of challenges, right?
It is. We've had this tug of war of, hey, do we go to enterprise sales? Do we go I've sold to governments for a long time. It's sort of the opposite of what we're trying to do here. And so, the $9.5 million in revenue that I talked about, and that's the last 6 months,
that's wild, man, by the way. That
has been nothing but earned media, and direct to consumer. When we're running some social media ads and things like that. And one of the things we're most excited about with the partnership with Brave is to have some visibility there. We've got another announcement that if we were this much closer, I would say it today. But it deals with a retail partner that's going to bring us in, and we'll have a sort of an exclusive retail agreement with one of the bigs that we'll announce. That will help. But again, 9,000 phones out the door at this point. It's been a grassroots thing. I'll be, again, Eric's one of our partners, one of the founders. He's got a very structured following. He's friends with Tucker Carlson and Sean Ryan and some of these very big podcasters. And so we've been on their shows. We've talked about the issues of privacy. We've talked about the phone and the launch. And then that's sort of how we're getting out there. The advertising thing, the marketing thing, you could just pour millions of dollars in. We've talked to others that are spending millions a month.
It's insane. And
yeah.
And it's really cool to hear too. $9 million at this stage, it's company, it's amazing revenue to bring in. And think it's probably one of the cool things it seems like about starting this now is that you can actually kind of, do that type of model where you're not having to overinvest in just like way too many devices, and you can push it with single time and all of that. It's kind of a cool way to be able to go about it. And, it seems like a real organic, grassroots, a way of doing it. And, and how are the users liking it so far?
The reviews we're getting seem to be great. I think, this entire early adopters group, they were really sort of bought in on the mission of what we were trying to do. And, when you've got a good group of early adopters like that, there's a lot of grace that's extended to you. And I know you guys remember it from your early days too, right? So when you've got people that are excited for something that's different, they will deal with some of the things and realize you're small, realize you're trying to do this. We're not backed by any big money.
That's awesome. I mean, we'd be so lost without them, right? Like,
yeah. No, we would absolutely be lost without them. And many of them have direct lines to me, and we have some very, very funny exchanges about things. But yeah, it's we've got a bunch of reviews we put up on the website. There is friction at the change. It's getting better and better every month. Sort of the being able to synchronize everything from your previous devices onto ours is I think one of the things that's causing the most frustration. And I think it's going to be right after the new year that's going to be launched, so that from an iPhone or an existing Android, an ability to pull everything over to this phone will be there. Awesome. And automated and available. I think that's the biggest one. There's some carrier certifications. We operate well on T-Mobile and AT&T and all of their MVNOs. Verizon's been a little tough. The cost of entry for them to get certified on their networks is quite high. We're going to have the Unplugged version 2 will be out. The phone version 2 will be out in September of next year, and so that's our target for Verizon.
Cool.
I travel. Go ahead.
Is it U.S. only now, or
No.
Where can people anywhere?
U.S. and Canada. We'll ship anywhere. We'll ship anywhere in the world. We have that ability. I travel. Mine is on AT&T. It roams everywhere in the world. I carry a second unplugged phone with me whenever I go anywhere. I buy a local SIM card and I go through the whole thing with all and we haven't found any issues.
Nice.
There's certifications, right? In Europe, you've got to do CE. In Mexico, you've got to do NOM, right? So we FCC here in the US. So those things are there. We're approved at that big federal level in the US and Canada. But again, like it's an unlocked phone. And so a user can buy it and try it. We don't have any guarantees, and the reverse logistics when you start going into lots of different countries like that's an enormous investment that we'll have to make.
That's something. I mean, like
later.
Each one of these things is such a thing to wrestle with, right? Like you got not enough hours or hands in the day. I think it's smart though to kind of go with the U.S. and Canada market, and people will buy it from other places too. We covered a lot of ground here today. Is there anything we didn't really cover that you want people to know about?
I think the biggest thing for me is for, and again, your audience is already attuned to privacy. And the thing that we continue to try to convince people to do is to really do some research in the vulnerability the device you carry in your pocket does for you, right? There's tons of people who will tell me, right, this article that just came out on Wired was about, using this data for, to track U.S. soldiers and national security interests. And everyone's like, oh, well, I'm not a national security interest. Yeah, but you are a target for malfeasance, right? I've had my personal identity stolen a couple of times, and right, the same data that these guys are using their national security threats could absolutely be used for identity theft, parents of kids. That's the thing for me. When I joined the company, I was like, why are we not targeting parents of tweens and teens, right? Like why would they not want their kids, right? The amount of data that could model a kid's behavior that's available for purchase by anybody with a credit card. So that's one that did get folks in there. And the second is there's no one piece of technology. The Brave browser, the Unplugged phone, graphene, whatever the privacy tools are, there's not one thing that's going to solve this problem. And a lot of it falls on us as users to have some understanding of and limit what we decide to share. Those are those things for us. We're interested in hearing from all kinds of people, from potential new investors, new customers, channel partners that would be interested. Of course, I'll take any of those inbounds for sure. I answer them all.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, and great point about the family too, with the kids and all that. Yeah. They get such a cesspool of advertising to those kids too, on their devices. As a parent of young children, I relate on that one for sure. Yeah. You've been incredibly gracious with your time, Ryan, and we really appreciate it and are super excited about this this new rollout that both of us are going to be part of. Where can people find you online or find Unplugged and that want to learn more?
Yeah, Unplugged is easy. It's unplugged.com. We were very lucky to actually grab that domain. So unplugged.com is where you find us. About the only social place you'll find me is on LinkedIn. So I'm a 1T Paterson. Awesome. I'm a 1T Paterson. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to me directly. And yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome, Ryan. Well, we're excited to have to be part of your guys' Unplugged ecosystem, and love to have you back to kind of check back in on things and see how things are going in the future. And really appreciate you making the time to come on the show today.
Yeah, well, thank you guys too. The partnership and engagement we've had with the entire Brave team has been really one of our shining highlight this last quarter of the year. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Well, thanks a lot, Ryan. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologists podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.